Hailing from the irradiated world of Baal, the Blood Angels are amongst the most noble and honourable of Space Marines. In this video, we'll be showing you how to paint a Space Marine Terminator in the colours of the mighty Blood Angels. We'll be painting efficiently so that you'll be able to get your Blood Angels ready to defend the Imperium on the battlefield in no time. And by following this guide, you can easily transfer the techniques shown to any other Blood Angels in your collection. You'll have a whole army ready to go before you know it. If you're new to painting, you can check out the Citadel Colour Painting Essentials videos to learn more about it. The paints we've used are on screen now. These are the colours of the Blood Angels, but remember, you can paint your miniatures however you like. Also on screen now is any additional equipment we've used. This includes brushes and mediums, but feel free to use whichever brushes you're most comfortable with. And if you don't have mediums at home, you could use water instead. The first thing we need to do is undercoat the miniature, and for this we've chosen to use Mephiston Red. This will give us a great head start on the armour. So the first stage of this guide is going to be painting all of that red armour using Mephiston Red. Now this might seem a little odd seeing as we've already undercoated it in Mephiston Red. However, we do this because the spray can has a slightly different finish to the paint from the pot. And if we do this now, it means we can easily tidy up any mistakes later on. So we're using a small base brush just so we can get into all those tricky to reach areas. And we'll be thinning Mephiston Red down with a little bit of water, then applying a coat all over the miniature. We don't need to worry about being neat here. You should only need one thin coat to get the full coverage. And once that's done, we can move on to blocking in some other details. Now we'll move on to the black areas, and for these we'll be using Corvus Black. Again, this is a base paint, so we need to thin it down with some water and then apply it to the miniature. We'll need a few thin layers to get a full coverage. You might find it easier to switch to a smaller brush here, as some of these details are a little bit trickier to reach. Something like a medium layer brush here will work really well. We'll be using this to paint all of the black details. This includes the chest eagle and the undersuit, as well as the gun casing. Blood Angels are famous for their personal heraldry, so feel free to add any of these details to your miniatures. Games Workshop has loads of reference material available to help you with this. Now we'll be using Celestra Grey to paint the Crux Terminatus. Again, thin it down and apply a couple of layers. Just take your time around the details that we've already painted. But don't worry, if you make any mistakes, you can just thin down some Mephiston Red and tidy back up. For this, you might want to switch to a small layer brush. This will just give us a little bit more control and hopefully save some time on tidying up any mistakes. Now you can see that there's some parchment on the miniature, and we'll be using Wraithbone to paint this. And once that's done, you can see that this paint job is really starting to come together. We've just got a few more details to paint next. Now it's time to paint those eye lenses, and for these we'll use Warpstone Glow. Eye lenses can be quite tricky, so make sure you've got a really stable painting position. Take your time and just paint those areas in really carefully. Don't worry if you make any mistakes, just tidy back up with the Mephiston Red. We'll also use this to pick out any lenses on the miniature too. Again, you'll need to thin your paint down and apply a couple of layers. When working on more intricate details like this, it can be helpful to hold your breath if you're able. This will just make sure that we've got a really steady painting position. And next we're going to move on to our first metallic area. We'll be painting the silver areas using Leadbelcher. Just like any other base paint, we need to thin it down and apply a few layers. Just take your time and work your way around the miniature, picking out all of those silver details. And once that's done, you can see that we've only got a few details left to paint. Now there are just a few gold areas on the miniature, and for this we'll use Retributor Armour. It's always better to thin our base paints down with some water and then apply a few thin layers to our miniatures. Doing this avoids clogging up any of that awesome detail we can see. Now all our base coats are done, we can start adding some contrast and shades to really bring this miniature to life. We'll start out with Flesh Tearers Red, and we'll be using this in two ways. We'll take it straight from the pot, and we'll use this as a recess shade for the armour. Doing a recess shade simply means dropping the shade only into the areas where the panel lines meet. If we were to apply this paint all over the miniature, this would change the colour of the armour, and we'd have to spend quite a long time having to layer back up with that Mephiston Red. Doing a recess shade saves us loads of time, as we're only likely to have a few little mistakes to tidy up here and there. This is a really deep red, and even though it's a contrast paint, it can work as a shade just as well. You'll see that this adds loads of subtle depth to that armour. We'll also add this paint over the Purity Seals. Make sure you've got a solid Mephiston Red base coat before you do this. This will just change the colour of the Purity Seals slightly and help them stand out from the rest of the armour. And if you make any mistakes or get any splodges anywhere, just use some Mephiston Red, thin down with water, and tidy back up. Now we'll be adding a shade of Nuln Oil to a few different areas of the miniature. This will include the silver and the grey as well as any lenses, and we'll also pop it over the black details too. This will add some subtle depth all over those areas. When you're using a shade, just be careful to control any excess pooling. If you find that it is pooling anywhere in any of the recesses too much, just clean off your brush and use that to soak up any excess. Using a shade like this over a variety of different areas really helps to tie the whole paint scheme together. And once that's dry, we can see that our miniature is already looking awesome. Just a couple of stages to go. Our next shade will be Agrax Earthshade, and we'll also be using this with Lahmian Medium to achieve two different effects on the miniature. First of all, we'll apply it straight from the pot over any gold details. And you can see that this adds lots of age and depth. Again, just be careful to control any excess pooling here. Then we'll take 1 part Lahmian Medium to 1 part Agrax Earthshade and thin it down on our palette. We'll be applying this over any parchment. We thin it down so that it's a little bit more subtle when we apply it to the miniature, and this avoids overpowering any of those pale base coats. Now you can absolutely leave your model here. It's more than ready to take on enemies on the gaming table. However, if you'd like to take this paint job up a notch, stick with us. The next thing we're going to do is apply an edge highlight to that armour, and for this we'll use Troll Slayer Orange. So take your small layer brush and be careful to make sure you've got a good consistency of paint. We'll need to thin it down on the palette, and we want the paint to glide effortlessly off the brush, but we don't want it too watery as this won't settle on the miniature correctly. Once you're happy with your paint consistency, load up your brush but be careful not to overload it, and then use the edge of your brush, and we'll run this along all of those hard armour panels we can see. Using the edge of your brush along those armour lines means that we get a really crisp and quick highlight. It's really up to you how much edge highlighting you want to do. You could just choose to pick out the most prominent details, or you can work your way around the miniature picking out more of the edges. Take your time and make sure you've got a really stable painting position, and keep a good point on your paintbrush. As always though, if you make any mistakes, you can always tidy back up. Just make sure you thin your paint down first. Don't be scared to move the model around to help you get the best angle to get those highlights done. And there we are, your Blood Angels Terminator is finished and looking fearsome. That Xenos filth better beware. You can now go on to base your model and apply any relevant transfers. We've used Armageddon Dunes to base our miniature, and if you'd like to learn more about technical paints, you can check out our video all about them. For more tutorials, tips and tricks, you can head to your local Warhammer store where our amazing staff will be more than happy to help. Or you can head over to citadelcolor.com. Well, we hope you've enjoyed the video and we'll see you next time. Bye!